Welcome back to my channel, guys. This video might end up becoming an absurd video. I'm not sure yet, TBD, to be determined. But the subject of this video, it's been on my mind quite a bit lately. And as some of you know by now, when I have a rant, in my head, when I'm ruminating over something, it's only a matter of time before I share it on here because I'm curious what other people think. So let me set the scene. Let me provide some context. The reason this whole subject started being on my mind was that I have a coworker, and I work from home, by the way, so that sort of complicates things in that you don't really know the people you work with when you work from home. Not that you necessarily really know who they are when you work in an office. Everybody has secrets. But, working remotely, you're only sort of getting a dash of what that person really is like, right? Like when you work remotely, it's harder to pick up on things like body language, right? Because you're not always interacting with them in person and seeing their like movements and their communication style. Obviously, it's all virtual. It's all through your computer, so it's different to begin with. But anyway, I have had a really hard time interacting with this person at work. So in the beginning, I was like, am I doing something? Like, why, how do I even have this dynamic with this person? That from the very beginning, it was very troubling. Mostly the communication with this person, like very jolting communication, very terse communication, to the point where it felt very rude. Um, and even disrespectful. And so in the beginning, I was like, I guess this person's just extremely rude, but it was very difficult to navigate. It's still very difficult to navigate working with this person. And over time, it's like I keep getting more and more puzzle pieces to this person, as you do with any dynamic, right? Any relationship, you get more and more puzzle pieces, and you sort of go like, oh, maybe this is a different thing. And I'm convinced that this person is autistic. I already had a feeling that it might be that, because the disconnects felt so strong to me that it wasn't anything I recognized before, uh, working with somebody in the workplace or even knowing somebody personally. And then I looked into it online, and I was like, oh my God, this has to be it. Like I saw so many symptoms in this person at work. But then I did what I always do, which is I went down the rabbit hole, and then I was like, wait, am I autistic? Like there's certain things here, social anxiety, check in certain situations, uh, discomfort with eye contact. There are certain situations where I feel very uncomfortable with intense eye contact. Please tell me in the comments if you agree. It's not everybody. It's not like, with friends and stuff, I never have issues with eye contact or family. But I've noticed, like I remember a few months ago I was in Dallas, Texas, and I remember feeling uncomfortable making eye contact with the server. And then I went back to my hotel room and I was like, what was that? Like, what is that about? But then I realized I was at that same restaurant the night before with there was a different server, and there were no eye contact issues there. So then I was like, oh, I guess it's only when the person like stares into my soul that I feel uncomfortable with eye contact. It's actually, I guess, when the other person is very persistent with their eye contact, whereas I'm more like how I am even making this video. It's like I'll make eye contact for a few seconds, and then I'm off telling my story, and I'm like, and sometimes people comment, by the way, on my videos saying, why is he looking at the ceiling? And I'm like, am I the weird one that, yes, when I'm telling a story, I'm thinking, maybe my brain works more slowly, that it's all hands on deck. I don't know. But when I'm telling a story, I tend to like look around, and I thought that was normal. Maybe I am the abnormal one. Okay. I don't know. But anyway, I got myself paranoid for a second that maybe I am autistic actually, and nobody told me for 30 something years. And then I took a few tests online, and turns out I have minimal autistic traits. By the way, the tests online for these things, I mean, some of the things, like a lot of the questions revolved around discomfort with breaking routine. And I'm like, doesn't everybody kind of get annoyed when their routine is broken? Isn't that really vague? If my boss messages me, my boss is not the person I have a conflict with at work. But if my boss reaches out and suddenly it disrupts my entire, like it totally changes the trajectory of my day, I'm gonna get annoyed. I'm not gonna cry about it. I'm not gonna throw a temper tantrum, but on the inside, I'm gonna be like, fuck this. I feel like that's most people though, no? So I don't know about these online tests. Another question was like, do you get uncomfortable with certain no, it wasn't uncomfortable, it was do you get very uncomfortable or like extremely uncomfortable with textures, like certain clothes and certain foods? And I was like, well, now that you mention it, I am one of those people who eating avocado in its natural form, like I can eat I'll eat it, but like it reminds me of soap. But I'm like, I don't think that's autism. I also have a thing about turtlenecks. I don't wear turtlenecks. I mean, I also live in Miami, so how often is a turtleneck necessary? But suddenly I'm questioning all my, life decisions taking this test. Like, wait, it, is every choice that I've made, including moving to a tropical climate, linked to potential autism? But yeah, I'm pretty sure that a good portion of people have discomfort with certain foods or clothes textures, and I don't know that means you're autistic. But I guess that's the whole point of the test, right? It's one of many questions. I'm deranged, but I'm not autistic, is the conclusion. So, anywho, I felt very relieved once I diagnosed my coworker as being autistic because it made me think, oh, I'm not crazy. Like there's something here that's beyond my understanding, and I don't think I'm contributing to it. I think it's it's their fault. No, but seriously, it made me think like, okay, maybe I just need to approach things differently. Maybe, it's a good lesson too to like leave your own ego at the door. It has nothing, it's not personal. You just maybe have to navigate this person more sensitively. But what's interesting is when I was reading online the signs or symptoms or whatever of autism, I was like, a lot of this kind of correlates with narcissism if you really think about it. Both are disorders rooted in you're so in your own mind, in your own world, in your own universe that it becomes harder to connect with other humans emotionally, genuinely, empathetically. So I found that very peculiar. And then I was talking to my friend, and actually, this is what prompted me to do the research on autism. I was talking to my friend about Amanda Seals. If you guys are familiar with Amanda Seals, she's so smart. The public figure, what would we call her? Entertainer slash political commentator. I guess we can call her a commentator. Amanda Seals is so smart. She's so eloquent with her views and her. She's a critical thinker. I find her very interesting to listen to and also very charismatic. But Amanda Seals also has moments where she sounds very condescending and where she thinks she's the smartest person in the room, and that makes her the most valid human in the room. And actually, now I'm remembering why I was talking to my friend about Amanda Seals randomly. It's because Amanda Seals did this debate, or panel, a debate, which you can find here on YouTube. And again, it's like you see her intelligence in this video, but she's so condescending to the people she's debating. And since then, she's done interviews about this debate, basically insulting everybody's intelligence and sort of framing this debate as not only were they not on her intellectual level, but that they were like rude to her and inappropriate to her. And that's a theme with Amanda Seals, that she has had a million jobs as a public figure. Like it's actually, her resume is very impressive. But there's this theme that she never stays somewhere very long. And she's talked about how there's a theme that she's always on the outs with people, and she doesn't really understand why. And so she has since talked about how she believes she's autistic. The reason I say believe is because she kind of self-diagnosed, which is not really a credible way to say you are autistic. Um, though obviously I did my own self-diagnosis to prove that I'm not autistic. Anyway, if you pay attention to this whole Amanda Seals saga, um, you'll find a lot of comments online that claim, girl, you ain't autistic, you're just narcissistic. And my whole thing is now, after doing research on autism, I'm like, I don't think it's mutually exclusive. In fact, it seems like there's quite a Venn diagram overlap of these two phenomenons again, that are all about like you're rooted in your own perspective and you have a hard time understanding other people's perspectives. So, anyway, then I started thinking about how we throw around this term narcissism, including me. I call every other person a narcissist. And now I'm like, what if a good portion of the people we call narcissistic, are actually on the spectrum and they've never been diagnosed? And they're people like Amanda Seals. Like, at what point do we know? And a more important question is, at what point do we give people grace because there's something potentially medically, chemically, psychologically different about them versus accountability, right? Like, at what point do we excuse behavior that we would never exhibit, we meaning the general public, but then also at what point do we, you could also say the opposite, right? Of like, well, if this is something that's out of your control, then maybe you have to be socialized or re-socialized to be taught what is appropriate and what's not appropriate. But the interesting thing about all this too is that autistic people oftentimes are very cerebral, and they will be very talented at a specific thing because their brain just works differently, where they're maybe able to focus or hone in on one specific thing more than the average person, I suppose. And so then they become creative geniuses. And that sort of feeds, again, this idea of ego and narcissism. If you have somebody like Amanda Seals, where audiences will see that, will see her, and some people will get freaked out by what feels like a very condescending and elitist attitude, and other people will be like, you just don't understand her, she's a genius. They say the same thing about Kanye West. I'm like, maybe Kanye West this whole time is a little bit autistic, and nobody realized it. But again, at what point do we have compassion for somebody based on a behavior we see that doesn't feel standard, I guess? And at what point do we also expect accountability? And even beyond autism, it's not just autism, and it's not just narcissism. I feel like in general now every other person has some kind of diagnosis. I am shocked by how many adults I know who say they have ADHD. Like, I remember when some kids at school had ADD growing up, and there was a time before that where nobody had ADD or ADHD. But now it feels to me like every other person I know has ADHD, or they're manic depressive, or they're autistic, or they're non-binary, or they're this other thing. And I'm like, you can't all be, on this spectrum or that spectrum. Or I, again, it's like, what do I know, right? I'm not a professional when it comes to these diagnoses. But at a certain point, I'm like, how much of this is authentic, and how much of this is a culture where we seek to categorize and label so that we can avoid really growing and evolving as people. And more importantly, a lot of these uh, conditions that I've mentioned, a lot of these diagnoses, they lead to feeding the pharmaceutical industry, which in the States in particular is such a huge, huge, I mean, it's got to be $1 billion industry, right? So that is concerning to me as well. I am also shocked by how many people I know, how many friends I have who are either on antidepressants or some kind of anxiety meds, or again, some kind of ADHD meds. And I'm fully aware that me saying this, I sound probably judgmental. Like, what do I know? I'm not their doctor. I'm not their therapist, 100%. But as a general, like, bird's eye view, am I the only one who's concerned about this? That I feel like we've normalized labeling people as, well, it's as simple as this: you're manic depressive, you've got this, you've got that, here's a pill, subscription for life, knock yourself out. I mean, one of the most pivotal things for me the last year or so has been realizing how much my anxiety and stress levels are decreased by running. And I've been a runner for many, many years, but it's only this year, and maybe I'll make a video about this at some point. It's only this year that I started running at the start of the day versus after work. And I found that my days are totally different. I'm just much calmer throughout the day. I'm less triggered by things that happen at work that don't go my way. Maybe that's the autism. Just kidding, just kidding, just kidding. And it's my new thing now to run right before something that I know will stress me out, whether it's like an interview or it's like I had a presentation last autumn at a conference, and I never do public speaking engagements. I mean, I haven't done public speaking in probably at least a decade, maybe since college. So I was extremely stressed about that, and I found that I was so much calmer going for a run right before. It's almost like a warm up, and then the show, is the situation um, that brings me stress. But it's almost like the run helped prepare me emotionally. It's a really bizarre thing, but I'm like, wow, I'm so glad I know this now, that this is something I can do to relieve that tension without taking a drug or drinking alcohol, or just sitting there like frantic. My point in saying all this is that there are natural remedies to stress. I know meditation works for a lot of people. Meditation doesn't work for me. By the way, for me, running is the meditation. That is what calms my mind. And maybe there's other things I haven't discovered yet that will continue to help me on this journey of calming the nerves, calming the mind. But until then, I'm saddened by how many people have normalized the concept of doing something inorganic, like taking meds, to soothe what's probably a bigger issue, which is, like I said, something like generalized anxiety. I think our generation, in particular millennials and Gen Z, I feel like a lot of us haven't been given, well, actually, I guess you could say that about any generation. I mean, think about all the war veterans who came back from Vietnam and had no support, no therapy, and they came home with PTSD. And a lot of these people we know, and it's still a thing, a lot of veterans, their way of soothing is through alcohol or drugs. So maybe I shouldn't make this as a generational claim, but I do feel like a lot of my peers don't know how to manage conflict in a way that doesn't involve ingesting something. And that makes me uneasy. And that concerns me for our society, that we're so quick to, I guess, metaphorically, I feel like we always put band aids on things. And band aids are meant to be temporary, they're not meant to be a permanent solution. You can't put a band aid on an open wound and just pray for the best. I mean, you gotta like take care of the wound, get some stitches. Anyway, end of rant. Yes, this is a long video, which I knew would happen. Please let me know what you think in the comments. I know that I just glossed over 12 topics at once. This was very much a rant, a stream of consciousness moment. But I'm curious what you guys think about any of this. Hopefully I don't get blasted in the comments. Let me know what you think in the comments. See you next time.